ඕකාසවන්දාමි භන්තේ ද්වාරතයේනං මයං කත්තං සප්පං අපරාධං කමතු මේ භන්තේ ဒ ුතියම්පි ඕකාසවන්දාමි භන්තේ ද්වාරතයේනං මයං කත්තං සබ්බං අපරාධං කමතු මේ භන්තේ තතියම්පි ඕකාසවන්දාමි භන්තේ ද්වාරතයේනං මයං කත්තං සබ්බං අපරාධං කමතු මේ භන්තේ
කමාමි යමහං වදාමි තං වදේස්ථ නමෝ තස්ස භගවතු අරහතෝ සම්මා සම්බුද්දස්ස
නමෝ තස්ස භගවතු අරහතෝ සම්මා සම්බුද්දස්ස නමෝ තස්ස භගවතු අරහතෝ සම්මා සම්බුද්දස්ස නමෝ තස්ස භගවතු අරහතෝ සම්මා සම්බුද්දස්ස
බුද්ධං සරණං ගච්ඡාමි
බුද්ධං शरणं गच्छामि
ධම්මං සරණං ගච්ඡාමි
ධම්මං शरणं गच्छामि
සංඝං සරණං ගච්ඡාමි
සංඝං शरणं गच्छामि
ဒုတိယံ පි බුද්ධං සරණං ගච්ඡාමි
ဒုတိယံ පි බුද්ධං शरणं गच्छामि
ဒုတိယံ පි ධම්මං සරණං ගච්ඡාමි
ဒုတိယံ පි ධම්මං शरणं गच्छामि
ဒုတိယံ පි සංඝං සරණං ගච්ඡාමි
ဒုတိယံ පි සංඝං शरणं गच्छामि
တတိယံ පි බුද්ධං සරණං ගච්ඡාමි
တတိယံ පි බුද්ධං शरणं गच्छामि
တတိယံ පි ධම්මං සරණං ගච්ඡාමි
တတိယံ පි ධම්මං शरणं गच्छामि
တတိယံ පි සංඝං සරණං ගච්ඡාමි
တတိယံ පි සංඝං शरणं गच्छामि
တိစရဏගමනං සම්පුන්නං
ආම්බන්තේ
පාණාති පාතා වේරමණී සික්ඛාපදං සමාදියාමි
පාණාතිපාතා වේරමණී සික්ඛාපදං සමාදියාමි
අදින්නාදානා වේරමණී සික්ඛාපදං සමාදියාමි
අදින්නදානා වේරමණී සික්ඛාපදං සමාදියාමි
අබ්‍රහ්මචර්යා වේරමණී සික්ඛාපදං සමාදියාමි
අබ්‍රහ්මචර්යා වේරමණී සික්ඛාපදං සමාදියාමි
මුසාවාදා වේරමණී සික්ඛාපදං සමාදියාමි
මුසාවාදා වේරමණී සික්ඛාපදං සමාදියාමි
සුරාමේරය මජ්ජපමා දට්ඨානා වේරමණී සික්ඛාපදං සමාදියාමි
සූරාමේරය මච්ඡපමාදට්ඨානා වේරමණී සික්ඛාපදං සමාදියාමි
විකාල භෝජනා වේරමණී සික්ඛාපදං සමාදියාමි
විකාල භෝජනා වේරමණී සික්ඛාපදං සමාදියාමි
නච්ච ගීත වාදිත විසූක දස්සන මාලා ගන්ධ විලේපන ධාරණ මණ්ඩන විභූෂණට්ඨානා වේරමණී සික්ඛාපදං සමාදියාමි
නච්ච ගීතවාදිත මාලාගන්ධ
විසූක දස්සන
නච්ච ගීතවාදිත විසූක දස්සන මාලාගන්ධ විලේපන ධාරණ මණ්ඩන විභූෂණට්ඨානා වේරමණී සික්ඛාපදං සමාදියාමි
උච්චාසයන මහාසයනා වේරමණී සික්ඛාපදං සමාදියාමි
उच्चासयन महासयना वेरमणि सिक्खापदं समाधियामि
Tisaranena saddhing atthanga silang samadhayitva sadhukang surakhitam katva appamadena sampadetabang
आम्बन्ते साधु
Silena sugating yanti silena bhoga sampada silena nibbhuting yanti tasma silang visodaye.
साधु साधु साधु
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Dear friends, today we are going to have this session just few days before Vaisakha Purnima Day, full moon day of Vesak. This is the day that everybody, all Theravada, Mahayana Buddhist countries, people celebrate the Buddha's birth, enlightenment and passing away. When we celebrate somebody's birthday in ordinary mundane society, people have parties, eating, drinking, dancing, singing and so on. When we celebrate the Buddha's birthday, we don't do all this. Rather, we want to think of the wonderful, noble qualities of the Buddha. Therefore, I selected a topic, what makes the Buddha great? Since we all pay respect to the Buddha, we must know at least some of the qualities that make the Buddha great. Nobody on earth can give all the qualities of the Buddha that makes him great. Only another Buddha can give the qualities, all the qualities of a Buddha that makes him great. I am simply bringing out very few points during this short Dhamma talk. The first one is Buddha's wisdom and compassion. Buddha's wisdom and compassion. आप लोगों का वो माइक्रोफोन म्यूट कर लीजिए. Okay.
yes yes Bhante, yes.
Buddha, we want to first bring out Buddha's compassion and wisdom. Buddha was very, very much concerned about our suffering. Since he knows all the depth and width and profundity of suffering, he knew what suffering is. Perfectly he knew. Therefore he did not want us to suffer, because he knew what suffering is. He did not want any of his disciples to suffer. And therefore when he gave instructions to us to follow, he said, especially to bhikkhus, bhikkhus are very close associates of the Buddha, that is the first audience of the Buddha, first group of disciples of the Buddha are bhikkhus. So they are readily available. Anytime Buddha wanted to give advice, these bhikkhus are available. And they themselves have dedicated their life to religious life, and therefore he addressed them first. In his address he said one day, bhikkhus, give up unskillfulness. It is possible to give up unskillfulness. If it were not possible to give up unskillfulness, I would not say, bhikkhus, give up unskillfulness. Since it is possible to give up unskillfulness, I say, bhikkhus, give up unskillfulness. And then he said, this is very, very compassionate advice. Then he said, if giving up unskillfulness caused detriment and suffering, I would not say, bhikkhus, give up unskillfulness. Since abandoning unskillfulness brings benefit and happiness, I say, bhikkhus, give up unskillfulness. This is very much like a very compassionate mother advises her children to prevent them from doing anything unwholesome, like committing crimes, stealing, and so on. Because she knows that her children will eventually suffer in the hands of the society and the police, and therefore she does not want them to get into that kind of trouble. Exactly like that, Buddha said, because it is possible to give up unskillfulness. If it is not possible, I would not ask you to give up unskillfulness. By giving up unskillfulness, if you have any detriment, harm, I would not ask you to give up unskillfulness. Since abandoning unskillfulness brings you happiness, I ask you to give up unskillfulness. Then again he said, because not only giving up unskillfulness, but because cultivate skillfulness. It is possible to cultivate skillfulness. If it were not possible to cultivate skillfulness, I would not ask you to develop skillfulness. Since it is possible to cultivate skillfulness, I say, because cultivate skillfulness. If cultivating skillfulness caused detriment and suffering, I would not say, because cultivate skillfulness. Since the cultivation of skillfulness brings benefit and happiness, I say, because cultivate skillfulness. This is a very wonderful, very compassionate, far-sighted advice the Buddha gave us. That is one of the qualities, one quality. Another quality I found, that the Buddha, even though he wanted the whole universe to be free from suffering, he did not rush to convert people. He did not rush. Rather, he with patiently took time and gave time to people to think. He was not someone who brainwashes somebody and force him to accept his teaching. And he always give plenty of time to people to think. There are many such incidents. I want to mention only one in this talk among many for people to think how patient he was. There was a man called Upali, the follower of a Niganta, of Nigantas. One day he came to debate with the Buddha. Before he came to debate with the Buddha, he boasted, I will go and argue with Gautama Buddha and thrash him here and there like a strong man holding somebody by his hands and fling here and there and throw in the ground. I will do that in debate to the Gautama Buddha. With that kind of boasting, he came to see the Buddha and had an argument. Argument was on karma. And he wanted to prove that physical action is the most important in committing karma, physical karma. And then he came and presented to the Buddha that straight away he said, do you believe in physical, there are three types of karmas, mental, verbal and physical. Which of them you think is most powerful? And then Buddha asked him, Upali, what do you think, Upali? He said physical karma, physical action is the most powerful. Then Buddha said to him, Upali, if you stay your ground without wavering, I will argue with you. He made him promise 3 times that Upali would stay his ground firmly. Then Buddha said, no, Upali, it is not the physical karma, but the mental karma is the most important. So on that there was an argument. So Buddha proved to him that mental karma is the most important because he said, Chetana bhikkhave kammang vadami, it is the thought that I declare karma. Buddha repeated this to put it in different way to Upali. And Upali did not accept, and again he went on arguing. So finally, Upali said to the Buddha, Venerable Sir, when you gave me the reason for mental karma is the most important, I was convinced. But because of your style of talking, when Buddha talked, he had a wonderful style. Anybody can be mesmerized. And this man was so pleased with the Buddha, and he said, Venerable Sir, I was really, really amazed. You have a wonderful, marvelous way of presenting Dhamma. So I give up my argument, I accept yours, and I take refuge in you, the Buddha, the Dhamma and Sangha, please accept me as your follower. Then Buddha said, Upali, you are very famous. You are very famous. And you are rich. And person like you should not jump to a conclusion like this. You think about it. You think about it. Then Upali said, Venerable Sir, I take your refuge second time, because if I went to another teacher and declared that I like to be his follower, he would jump up and take me into the street and take me in a procession, declaring to the society that I, very rich, educated, intelligent person, became his follower. It was an honor to that person. It was sort of propaganda for that purpose. Seeing me accepting his religion, many people will follow him. So he can increase the followers. But you, Venerable Sir, ask me to think about it, and therefore I take refuge second time. Second time. Then Buddha said, Upali, okay, but you don't stop your support to Nigantas. All these years you have been supporting Nigantas. Give dana, and you must continue that. Then Upali said, Venerable Sir, I take refuge in you for the third time, because I have heard that you say to people, all the gifts should be given to you, your disciples, not to anybody else. But I heard from you right now that you are asking me to give dana, continue my support to Nigantas as well. For this reason, Venerable Sir, I take refuge in you for the third time. So this is how Upali took refuge 3 times. And this is what we are doing these days as well. So, you see, the Buddha was so open-minded, so generous, so wise. He did not rush to accept people as his followers. Sometimes Buddha asked, when someone declares himself to be Buddha's follower, Buddha would tell him, since you are coming from another religious tradition, I normally ask you to stay for 4 months under probation. You must go through 4 months probation. And sometimes people say, Venerable Sir, if you ask me not only 4 months, if you ask me to go through 4 years under probation, I would do that. So therefore, whenever somebody comes, Buddha would not grab him very quickly to make his disciple. That is another quality that makes the Buddha great. On this Vesak day we must think of that. Another quality I saw in the Buddha that makes him great is that he was so honest, so sincere, so pure and clean. He asked, there is a discourse in Majjhima Nikaya, the that is called Vimansaka Sutta. Vimansaka Sutta. Vimansaka Sutta, Buddha says, bhikkhus, a bhikkhu who is an inquirer, not knowing how to gauge another's mind, should investigate the Tathagata with respect to two kinds of states. States of cognizable through the eye and through the ear. So, he asked the disciples, especially bhikkhus, and that applies to anybody else as well, that instead of believing in the Buddha, believing in his purity, his wisdom, instead of doing that, you must investigate the Buddha. How can you investigate? You cannot accept somebody to be pure or clean by at first sight. You have to associate with him for a long period of time, using your two senses, eyes and ears. Eyes to see what he does, ears to hear what he says. So Buddha said, when you, bhikkhus, investigate him, investigate the Buddha, you come to know from your own investigation, you come to know that this person, no defiled state cognizable through the eye or through the ear, there's no such defiled state to be found in this person, that means in the Tathagata. That is one criterion to accept him as a noble person, pure person, by associating with him. Second, when you associate with the Buddha using your eyes and ears, you will not find a mixed state cognizable through the eye or through the ear. Mixed state. Mixed state means in public he is very holy, noble, pure. In private it is just the other way around. And that kind of wishy-washy double standard you could not find in him. To do that, you have to associate with him. You see, to come to that conclusion, you have to associate with him using your eyes and ears. And then, when you associate with him, you can see the cleanliness, cleansed state in the Buddha's behavior. Everything is clean. That you notice it with your eyes and with your ears. And with this Venerable One became pure and clean just very recently in order to show off, or has he been this way for a long period of time? When you associate with him using your eyes and ears, you come to a conclusion that the Tathagata, the Buddha, has been pure and clean for long period of time. At least in this life, let alone in samsara. At least in this life, His mind was bent upon purity. His behavior was guided by purity, clarity, and he is completely molded by purity and clarity. And also when you investigate the Buddha, this is the challenge Buddha gave to the bhikkhus. If you investigate, you can see this Venerable One has acquired renown and attained fame, but the dangers connected with the renown and fame are not found in him. You see, when someone is famous and that person would keep showing his pride of being famous, he would not care for the closest associates, and he would be very proud, conceited, and arrogant, very stiff. But in the Buddha's case, these are the dangers of being famous. When you become famous, you are very proud, arrogant, angry, don't care for anybody. But in Buddha's case, you don't find anything. He was very, very humble, very, very relaxed, as if there is nothing in him to make him famous. Even though he was respected by the whole world, human and divine beings, because of his purity and clarity and farsighted wisdom, compassion and so forth, he was respected. But he was not puffed up with this respect and honor. You can see that in him. He said, you associate with me and see how I behave. Then when he investigates, so these are the things that we must investigate. When he investigates him, he comes to know this Venerable One is restrained without fear, not restrained by fear, and he avoids indulgence in sensual pleasures because he is without lust through the destruction of lust. Now, sometimes somebody can refrain from lust temporarily. Sometimes somebody can refrain from lust out of fear of criticism, social sanctions, or punishment, or some such kind of things. Somebody can refrain from punishment. Being a monastic, being a mendicant and so forth, he would think what people think of me, and therefore I must abstain from committing sensual misconduct or sensual any conduct. So lust, I should avoid expressing lust out of fear. But the Buddha abstained from it not out of fear or shame, but he destroyed the root of lust, that is greed, desire, clinging, craving. He completely destroyed. So the person who associates with him can see this purity of the Buddha that comes out of uprooting the root of desire, root of defilement. And again, sometimes people say various things about Buddha. So he would say, I have heard and learned this from the Blessed One's own lips. I am restrained without fear, not restrained by fear. You see, restraining without fear and restraining by fear are two things. Restraining by fear is you are restraining out of fear of reprimand and so forth. And I avoid indulgence in sensual pleasures because I am without lust through the destruction of lust. So then when one associates with the Buddha very closely, the Buddha should be questioned further and about various things, and are there, we have to find out, are they are found in the Tathagata or not, any defilement, defiled states cognizable through the eye or through the ear. Tathagata would answer thus: no defiled states cognizable through the eye or through the ear are found in the Tathagata. No mixed state found in Tathagata. His mind is very clear and pure. So the bhikkhu comes to a conclusion, the Tathagata. He places confidence in the Tathagata. The Blessed One is fully enlightened. Dhamma is well expounded. The Blessed Ones and by the Blessed One, and the Sangha is practicing very well. Then he would have full confidence in the Buddha. And that bhikkhu would say to others, here friends, I approach the Blessed One in order to hear the Dhamma. The Blessed One taught me the Dhamma with its higher and higher levels, with its moral more and more subtle levels, with its dark and bright counterparts. As the Blessed One taught the Dhamma to me in this way, through direct knowledge of certain teachings, here in the Dhamma, I came to a conclusion about the teachings. I place confidence in the Tathagata. The Blessed One is fully enlightened. Dhamma is well expounded by the Blessed One. The Sangha is practicing well. And therefore, the bhikkhu associate with the Buddha, this is the challenge when you associate with him. When anyone's faith has been placed, planted, rooted, and established in the Tathagata through these reasons, these terms and these phrases, his faith is said to be supported by reason, rooted in vision, firm. It is invincible by any recluse or Brahmins in good or God or Mara or Brahma, by anyone in the world. So when you establish your faith in the Buddha in this way, and it is called faith endowed with knowledge, that is called avecchappasada in Pali, avecchappasada. The saddha or shraddha endowed with knowledge, not with just faith. So you first have full knowledge of Buddha's noble qualities, and then you establish faith in him. That is called faith established, endowed with knowledge. And that faith can never be shaken by any human, divine, gods, Brahmas, and so on. And also Buddha said, bhikkhus, don't get upset when somebody criticize, analyze me, Dhamma, and the Sangha, or if somebody praises me, the Dhamma and the Sangha. And there was a very famous story in Digha Nikaya, the Brahmajala Sutta. There was one day Buddha was traveling from what you call Nalanda to Rajagaha, between Nalanda and Rajagaha. Then with many bhikkhus, then a man called Supya and Brahmadatta also were following him. They both belonged to another religious traditions. Supya was all the way he was criticizing the Buddha, blaming the Buddha, accusing the Buddha. At the same time, Brahmadatta, another person, was talking in praise of the Buddha all the way. So at the end, when they reached Rajagaha, after meals and so forth, all the monks sat down in the assembly hall and began to talk about the wonder of the Buddha, noble qualities of the Buddha. When Buddha, after his meal, he went to the discussion hall and asked bhikkhus what they were talking about. Then they said, Venerable Sir, we were talking about such and such a person criticized the Buddha and such a person praised the Buddha. Then Buddha said, bhikkhus, if somebody blames me, criticizes me, don't get upset. Listen very carefully. Listen very carefully. If you get upset, you cannot hear what they say. Therefore, you listen to him very carefully, mindfully, without getting upset, and see if they say something incorrect, wrong, it is a wrong accusation. You simply said, well, Mr. or Venerable, I don't think Buddha is such and such. That's all. And if somebody praises the Buddha, don't be delighted, don't be happy, so that you will not hear him correctly. Listen very carefully, because people blame or praise the Buddha on seeing and hearing things here and there, mere hearsay, or using some superficial appearance, superficial things, but they don't understand the depth of the purity and wisdom of the Buddha. To understand that, you have to listen very carefully. So, there was a man called Purana and Brahmayu. Brahmayu was 120 years old man. He wanted to know the Buddha, and he sent his disciple called Purana. And Purana associated with the Buddha for 7 months, following him like his own shadow, noticing everything he did, not hearing every word he said. And after 7 months, he came back to came back to Brahma Yu and reported, Venerable, I associated with Gautama Buddha for 7 months, asking all kind of questions, listening to his talks, observing him with my eyes, and I found no any iota of impurity in him. He is a perfect 100% pure and clean person. And then Brahmayu also, just like Upali, said 3 times that I would go to this Buddha and take him as my refuge, his Dhamma and his Sangha as my refuge, 3 times. So people, Buddha always gave them to people, us to think before we accept him or his Dhamma, or superficially having blind faith. There are many such discourses, many such places that we can find nowhere else, no any other religious tradition. That kind of freedom, like Kalama Sutta and so forth. I think as you asked me to give a short talk, this is just scratching the surface of the wonderful qualities, ocean of noble qualities, ocean of things that makes the Buddha great. And therefore now I like to end this session with this little talk. I want you to ask me questions. You said you have questions, and then if you ask me those questions, I can answer them. I can see some in the chat box. There are 35 number. I don't know whether they are questions or not, but if they are questions, you can ask me now. Okay,
कुणाला काही
Deepak?
प्रश्न आहेत का?
Yeah?
Yes, yes. कुणाला काही प्रश्न आहेत का?
Yes, you can start. Speak up.
Yes. I'm asking them, Bhante, that if they have a question or not. प्रश्न आहेत
Do
का
you?
कुणाला? Bhante,
Yes.
in our state, many people start the practice of Vassa period. In Vassa period, they observe the precept and practice the meditation. But the Vassa means Varsha Vassa is only for bhikkhus. So is it okay them to practice like that?
Yes. Actually, Deepak, that is a good time for people to have a sort of either personal seclusion or group meditation. In the purpose of having Vassa is to practice meditation for longer time and reading the Dhamma book, discussing the Dhamma. So this sort of spend devoting their time to practice various religious practices, spiritual practices, which if they have not had enough time to do that during the year, so they have to set aside certain period of time to do this, to observe. Say, as you took 8 precepts today. If somebody likes to have 8 precepts for 3 months, observe 3 months, this is a very good time. If somebody likes to have a very serious meditation practice, that Vasa period is the time. Especially in India, I think from July to August, it's a rainy season, right?
Yes, Bhante, yes.
Yeah, during that time it is very good that if people take time to practice meditation more seriously for longer time. Okay? It's good.
Yes,
It's good.
yes, Bhante.
Yeah.
Another question, Bhante.
Yes?
They asking, Bhante, please elaborate skillfulness and unskillfulness.
Ah. Skillfulness is unskillfulness. Skillfulness is called kusala. Unskillfulness means akusala. Kusala is the or the skillfulness is to in our life there are so many obstacles, so many defilements like greed, hatred, delusion, fear, tension, anxiety, worry, rivalry, jealousy, and so on. And one should learn to maneuver, guide our life through all these weaknesses without getting caught in those weaknesses. It is just like swimming in the ocean. Ocean has a lot of waves, sharks, dolphins, whales, and snakes, and so forth that can attack us. So someone who is a very skillful person, very skillful swimmer, can avoid all this and swim across the river or an ocean and get into the other shore. Similarly, in our life, we have many drawbacks, problems, difficulties, rivalries, quarreling, fighting, and so on. In spite of all these things, if one can guide oneself safely to reach Nibbana, or at least to keep the mind steady, that is skillfulness. This is called in Mangala Sutta, Puttasa lokadhammehi chittang yastana kampati asokang virajang kemang etam mangalamuttamang. Touched by worldly vicissitudes, if one's mind does not shake, mind remains unshaken, and that is the highest blessing. So we must train ourselves to be skillful to achieve that state. That means with ups and downs, when normally when people gain something, they will be very jubilant, smile, laugh, run up and down, dance, kiss, hug, and so forth, out of joy. When they lose, then they are depressed, disappointed, sad, full of sorrow, grief. All these negative things will invade their mind when they lose. Similarly, when they become famous, as I mentioned earlier, they will be very uptight, rigid, proud, and look down upon others and so forth. When they lost their fame and became defamed, then they will be depressed. Then they are praised by others, and then they are happy. When they are blamed by others, they will be unhappy. Then when they are happy, sukha, they are overly joy. When they are sad, unhappy, suffering, they overly go down, too much they will take it and become very emotional. So skillfulness is to avoid all these things and keeping the mind in a very steady, peaceful, happy state. So that kind of training is skillfulness. You have to have a skill to have that kind of mental state. That is skillfulness. In other words, skillfulness is that which reduce our greed, hatred and delusion and make us happy, reduce our suffering. Unskillfulness is increasing our suffering. Okay?
Uh, but there is a more two question. Is it okay to take?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, Bhante. Uh, the question is, uh, what is the exact meaning of Kamaloka and how to escape ourselves from this, from Kamaloka?
Okay. Karmaloka is the sensual world full of sensual pleasures. Now, while even while living in this Karmaloka, we can remain unaffected by Kamaloka, unaffected, like the Arahant or the Buddha. They lived in Kamaloka like anybody else. They ate, they slept, and they talked, and they moved, and they drank, and so forth. But they were not affected by the worldly pleasures or worldly pain, worldly suffering. Now, it is said that Buddha, referring to the Buddha, Buddha tasted food and said, Rasa Patisangvedi Tathaguto na Rasa Raga Patisangvedi. He tasted food but was not attached to food. He heard sound, when he was walking, if there were music going on both sides of the road, or if the people were dancing, singing, and so on, he hear that. He hears the sound of singing, but he was not become attached to the sound, smell, and so on. So Kamaloka is existing while we are here on this earth, and we can live in the same Kamaloka without becoming attached to them. So Kamaloka means the world where one can enjoy the sight, sound, smell, taste, touch and mental object thoughts. Because the persons have eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body and mind. And one has form, feeling, perception, thought and consciousness. So long as an individual has these things, that individual, full of greed, hatred and delusion, either enjoy what they experience through eyes, ears, nose and so on, or become depressed with these things. And therefore, in the Kama Loka, remember the word Loka used in the Buddha's teaching for this, the body of 1 fathom long body with its consciousness. That means our human life, human body with its consciousness is called world. So if there are 7 or 8 billion humans, there are 8 billion worlds. Each individual is considered to be world in the Buddha's teaching. So long as we have this body and mind, we live in Karmaloka. And when we learn, when we meditate, and then meditate immaterial practice, meditate on immaterial practice, it's called arupa jhana, arupa attainment. Then of course, while even living in this world, we can get into this immaterial world in our meditation. Of course, after death, we will be reborn in immaterial worlds. So Karmaloka means where humans, animals, divine beings live and enjoy their life. Even divine beings are in Karmaloka. They are in Karmaloka until one attains immaterial jhanas and goes to Brahma world. That person remains in the human, animal, divine world. He or she is in Karmaloka. Okay.
Yes, Bhante. Uh, Another question is how to be focused in Dhamma in daily life.
How to focus on
In
Dhamma
Dhamma.
on Dhamma in daily life
Yes, Lord.
is a very practical question. Surely, you must understand where the Dhamma is to focus the mind on. Where the Dhamma is. Dhamma, where you find Dhamma? Dhamma is within us. What is that Dhamma within us? We have what you call Four Noble Truths: suffering, cause of suffering, end of suffering, the path leading to the end of suffering. Where you find them? Where do we find suffering? We find suffering in us. Where do we find the cause of suffering? We find the cause of suffering in us. Where do we find the end of suffering? We find the end of suffering within us. We find the path leading to the end of suffering within us. So, whenever a certain mental state arises, like greed arises, as soon as greed arises, you pay attention to it and see this greed is the cause of my suffering. When hatred arises, you must see this hatred is the cause of my suffering. When delusion arises, you must say this delusion is the cause of my suffering. And therefore, I want to get rid of this suffering. In order to get rid of this suffering, I must reduce my greed. I must reduce my hatred. I must reduce my delusion. On the other hand, when we experience friendliness, where is that? Within us. When we experience patience, where is that? It is within us. When we have compassion, where is that? Within us. When we have equanimity, it is within us. When we want to be mindful, where is mindfulness? Within us. So these are the Dhammas. All the factors of enlightenment, Four Noble Truths, Noble Eightfold Path, dependent origination, all these are in us, in our mind, in our body. So, to practice Dhamma in our daily life, we have to look at our body and mind and what is happening there. What kind of mental state we experience any given moment, what kind of physical state we experience at any given moment, noticing them as they happen in our mind and body, we are paying attention to Dhamma in our daily life. So don't look for Dhamma outside. Don't look for Dhamma outside. Outside, if you take a book, for instance, just letters and papers and ink. What else? If you download things from internet, it's the same. But the Dhamma really is within us. That is why Buddha said, Pacchattam veditabbo vinyoi. Each and every individual must see within oneself. Each and every wise individual sees this Dhamma within oneself. Okay, I have, and also this Dhamma invites us to see us, see that Dhamma. And that is why it is called come and see. Ehi Pasiko. Ehi Pasiko is a very good topic. I have written a book on that. It will be published by the end of this year. It's called Come and See. That's the title of the book. Come and see means Dhamma within us invites us to look at it introspectively. That Dhamma arising in us, Dhamma existing in us, we must see within us. That is how we pay respect to Dhamma. That is how we see the Dhamma in our daily life. Okay?
कुणाला काही
I
प्रश्न आहेत का अजून?
I think Deepak,
Yes.
it is getting close to our lunch time,
Yes, Bhante. Yes.
and we have to go for Buddha Puja.
Yes, Bhante.
And I am glad that you all came. हम आप सब लोगों को आशीर्वाद दे देंगे. You are Deepak?
Yes, Bhante.
Ah.
Yes.
कैसा है?
ठीक है Bhante.
ठीक है.
Yes.
तो आप क्या नागपुर में रहता है क्या?
अभी नागपुर में है, लेकिन घर मूर्तिजापुर में है.
मूर्तिजापुर
इस
कहाँ है?
ये अकोला और अमरावती के बीच में.
अमरावती के बीच में?
अकोला, it's
नदी.
between Akola and Amravati.
अकोला एंड अमरावती.
It's near to
Yes.
Nagpur.
Nagpur, near Nagpur, I
Yes.
see. Okay.
Yes, Bhante.
Good, good.
Thank you.
Very good.
And
Very good.
Bhante, please forgive that I mismatched the time, because it's 6:30 as per your 9 a.m.
Yes, I thought it was 9 o'clock, so I
Yeah.
turned on my computer and went to the link
Yeah.
and clicked on the links and waited for 10 minutes, but no. Then I
Yeah.
found the talk is at 9:30. I
Mm.
closed it and got 9:30. Next time we can do it at 9 o'clock. Okay?
Thank you very much, Bhante. Thank you very
Oh,
much for coming.
okay, you are welcome. Okay, bye,
Uh,
everybody.
yes, Bhante. Yes.
Everybody, goodbye.
Blessings, Bante.
Okay, blessing. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, bye.
Yes, Bhante.